from Veterans Voices with Joe and Steve-O. Joe?
And I'm Joe. And again, Steve-O forgot. This is take two. He forgot the name of the podcast, which is incredible. And I'm the one who's really hungover today, and he's the one who can't remember the name of the podcast. So anyway, beyond that, we have two really great guests for you today. It's Chris and Tanisha Souza. They own Tardus Wealth Strategies. Chris is a Air Force vet and, left the Air Force and went on to become an entrepreneur and start a financial services company. And you'll learn all about that in this podcast. It's a really good one. I think you guys are going to like it. I personally am a client of Tardus Wealth Strategies. They've done great work for me and taught me a lot about money and investing. And I really like what they have done. Steve-O is not, but that's all good. You can learn different ways to invest, and we hope to talk about that on this podcast more in the future.
Yeah, so this is really a good conversation. I think that you're going to learn a lot. There's some really good information on how to transition, even if you're not transitioning from the military to civilian life. It's great for everybody. So this is really a good opportunity for Veterans Voices with Joe and Steve-O. See, I remembered it, to move forward. So I hope you like the episode, and give us your comments. Let us know what you're thinking. Make sure that you share and like us, and help us get this out.
Okay, here we are with episode 6.
Hey everybody, this is Steve-O with Veterans Voices with Joe and Steve-O, and got Joe, and we've got some great guests here. Joe, do you mind introducing your folks?
No, not at all. So today's guests are Chris and Tanisha Souza. They own a company called Tardus Wealth Strategies. And Chris was in the Air Force at one time, a long time ago. And they're going to tell us their story. So my first question, I guess, to start it off would be, go ahead and introduce yourselves. And then, Chris, if you want to dive into your old military story and give us that background, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So, my name is Tanisha Souza. I'm a lawyer. That's my background. I don't practice. I quit more than 20 years ago. Thank goodness. Recovering attorney. But I met this wonderful man several years ago after he left the Air Force. And we started a business together, but I'd like for him to share it. I think, the Air Force story and then how we met and all that.
Well, a long time ago. No, I'm kidding. This was back in 1985. I grew up on Kauai. If any of you guys have been on Kauai, think about 1985 on Kauai. I think there was not even one stoplight. So as I finished high school, there was not even 2-year college, nothing there. So I was like, wait, I'm going to be working either for the sugarcane plantation or one of the hotels. I got to get out of here. And I was doing nothing, getting in trouble. And so long story short, I came over to Oahu, took the test, got into the Air Force. And what I wanted was a 2-year wait with the aircraft mechanic. And I said, what's now? What can I go now? And they said, what's now? Civil engineering, plumbing. That's your AFSC. I said, how long from now? 2 weeks. I was like, I'm out of here. I got to get out. And so 2 weeks later, I was off to basic training. And pretty neat. I stayed in from 85 to 92. I did 4 years and then 2-year extension. And I grew a lot. I'm glad. And I would have stayed in, but I was at a Air Force base that is the largest training base for fighters in the world. And it's Luke Air Force Base. If any of you guys have been there, it's every minute on the minute, there's a touchdown and a takeoff of a jet. So talk about loud and everything rumbling all the time. That's the place. And so I chose to get out because I was there 6 years, and they said I would have been there minimum 12 to 15 years on the same base. I even crossed trained, and they told me go across the hall over there, and there's on-the-job training, and that's going to be your cross training. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get out. So for me, that's when I chose to get out. When I did, came back to Hawaii. I stayed in Arizona for a while. Came back to Hawaii, and then started a small construction company, and I did drywall work. And did well for a while, and then the economy went down, and no jobs are out there. And so condensing the time here, Tanisha and I met a little over 20 years ago. And as soon as we met, we started figuring out she had USC Law School loans that were the six figures. And long story short, we're like, wait, I was like, wait, what is that payment? You know, she was like, my loans for my school. And I said, how long? She said, 20 some years. I was like, what? That's a
Almost
mortgage.
30 years. Almost 30 years.
And I said, we got to figure out how to pay that off. So we sat down and said, okay, we got these 4 areas. Which one we're going to choose? And started actually going into flipping homes. And so we read books and jumped in.
So can you say that again? Because you cut out there for a sec.
When we started figuring out which way that we're going to pay off our school loans, we needed a lot of cash quickly. And so we went into the flipping home business. And the flipping home business is exactly what it is, flipping homes. So you see it on TV. It's a lot of work.
So much work.
And we went in eyes wide shut, meaning we wish we had a coach to do what we did, but we learned through the first home, made a ton of mistakes, kept the home too long, but luckily the economy was going up at that time, and flipped the home and paid off all our school loans. And then we were like, we need to do this again. She didn't want to.
Was this on Oahu or was this in Kauai?
Oahu, yeah, in Kailua.
Wow.
And so we just caught an upswing. And then the next one we did was in Kaneohe, and we can tell you stories among stories. But then the first one took a little over a year to finally turn over because, a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. The second one took us like 2.5 months from fix up and everything else to flip. And with that one, we made a lot more. And we were like, wait, I don't want to keep doing this. She was at a law firm. I was running a car dealership. And I'm like, we're working to the bone like every 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And we wanted more uncensored cash flow. So we flipped that into commercial properties and became financially free, and then wanted to teach others about doing this.
So going back to when you got out of the Air Force, did you take advantage of like any of the benefits, any of the VA benefits, or did you just charge right in and start doing your own thing?
I charged right in, didn't look back. I was like, I am out. Goodbye. I got to make it. I didn't even think of that back then. And so no, that would be my answer. And should I have taken advantage of it? Yes, but I didn't.
Yeah. So you and I got out of the Air Force about the same time. So I also was, I went in the Air Force in 79. I did 4 years, got out, said this isn't for me. And then about 1.5 years later, I was in Hawaii, and life was having a hard time. In fact, I was working for JN Chevrolet at the Harley dealer back then. And so this was like 1984, 85. And I remember I was stationed in Japan, and then I left, and I was like, I want to go back to the States. I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to, really be successful. And the good thing was Hawaii, there weren't that many people. Maybe that was a bad thing. Maybe that's why I was so unsuccessful in selling vehicles, but that's a hard life working for, JN Chevrolet, who was the biggest dealership. You probably, had some connection to them. But it was really, I probably wouldn't have gone back in the Air Force had I been more prepared, right? Because it was a different time. And then I went in and I did another 6 or 7 years, got out in 92, went back to Hawaii, and I lived there for almost 20 years. So, and it was always hard to get that next step up. And I could never buy a house because I was always just below the threshold to, the prices of houses kept going up, right? So I was just never there. And it's troubling. If I had been more prepared, if I had known about benefits available to me, if I had known Joe in those days, Joe I think was probably a little kid, it might have been different. So I think that's why this is so interesting to talk to you and to learn your story, because Joe's question is so pertinent. Yeah. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. So when I got out and went full force, I didn't look back. And now looking back, talking with people, I'm like, really? I could have done that. I even had the GI Bill, and you got 10 years to use it. I didn't even use that. I just was like, wow, and I paid for it. And as I did that, I wanted to be successful, wanted to be back home in Hawaii. So just being, having that tenacity to, I knew a lot, but I wasn't doing a lot until I met Tanisha.
He needed someone like me in his life.
Yeah, more personality type. I'm one of those guys that analysis paralysis. I knew everything about, in the sense of finance and investing. I was reading, but I was like, I wasn't doing much. So when she came, she was like, let's go. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So we jumped right into it, and pretty neat, what we created.
Well, one thing though that's interesting is we have a lot of military clients, and he's quick to tell them, oh, you should do this and get money for this and all this stuff. I'm thinking, how come we never do that? But anyway, but he thinks of it now, and he helps all of our clients do it. So it's really fun.
So Tanisha had a big pile of debt from going to law school, and Chris had unused benefits from the military that he just had to fire and never touched. That's great. That's a recipe.
And we still made it, right? We still did really well. So, yeah.
So since you mentioned it, Tanisha, tell us a little bit about your business and what you do now.
Okay, yeah. So basically, when I was working at the firm, at this big law firm here, I was really desperate to get out, and Chris, very desperate, and he wouldn't let me quit because of my student loans. So that's when I came up with the idea of flipping homes and stuff like that. So we did that, and then we got into passive income from real estate. Once we did that, I didn't have to work. The money we were making from our real estate was more than I was making as an attorney. So, and our bills were not that much. We were double income, no kids. So basically had all this money and hardly anything going out except for food. We were dining out every night. So we were like much larger than we are today. But we ate out a lot. So we spent a lot of money on that. But other than that, we had no bills. Student loans were paid off. We had no car debt, no mortgage debt. We had nothing. And we just had a lot of money. And so it wasn't until we got a call from a friend of ours that told us there's an opportunity to own a franchise. So I said, I'll quit my job like tomorrow and do that. And Chris was like, whoa, hold on a minute. Don't go so fast. Really need to think about this. I was like, what to think about? Let's just do it. So I ended up quitting my job about a month later, and we started the business. He was still at the car dealership. He was running a dealership, and not JN, a different one. And that's what when you said JN, we're like, okay, yeah, we know all that.
I know all of them. I know all of the dealerships and all the owners there in Hawaii. But it's a business I wouldn't get into, by the way.
So we it wasn't a huge risk because we already have the passive income. So I was able to, I said, hey, I'll do this for free for as long as it takes to make money. So within 8 or 9 months, we were making money. And so I was able to start paying myself. And then we just took it from there. I think a few years later, we ended up buying the franchise out. It was a franchise, and it was a company that was helping people pay off their mortgages early. And we weren't using it that way because we didn't have a mortgage, right? So we were actually utilizing some more advanced kind of investment strategies. And so, which is what gave me the idea for later, what we call the income snowball. So I created a system, basically an algorithm that we ended up patenting. It's basically a financial modeling system that's able to project the month and year that you will be financially free with passive income. And it tells you step by step what to do, right? Every month, every year. And what you have to do changes over time, and what you're investing in changes, but it's pretty nice because it just lays it out. We did it the hard way, but we've found an easier way to reach financial freedom. And we've been teaching clients that for a number of years. So that's what we do. So we switched it up to wealth coaching, and that's
so then, if you don't mind me asking, then so because we're hoping to reach out to military personnel. For a lot of veterans, the ship hasn't sailed, but they're past that transition into the next phase of life. And like Joe just went through when he was retiring, he and I spoke for 2 years before he retired, and he had already been talking about where he wanted to be, what his financial goals were, without really any specificity. But but I know with talking to Joe, I knew he wanted to. I think he was probably thinking, some type of affiliation or connection to the government, maybe as a contractor or something like that. Well, he's doing a whole different thing today, and I think that from talking to Joe, it seems like a lot of that is attributed to his, what he learned from you guys and from other other organizations or companies or people who have had success. And then he talks to me about that, and it really creates kind of a symbiosis, right? Same position, and how do we get to where we need to be? So how does a military person who's getting ready to get out, say in a year, how do they start preparing and start thinking about becoming you?
Yeah, here's my thought on that. If they have a year left or just a little time left, start doing something now, because when you're in, you of course you get the VA, HBA, all the extra money that's tax free. And I see a lot of military people not using it correctly, buying the nice cars that they can't afford, whatever the things they buy, and start putting that towards the future. So when they get out, and if let's say they do their 20, and they're now, their income gets cut half of base pay, it's like it's a wake up call when you get out. Okay, you got benefits, but then how are you gonna get paid? You're like, wait a minute. And so you want to start thinking about passive income. So even as you've gotten out, we have military people that are going to school full time, getting the GI Bill, working with getting some funds from the government, and we work with them even doing that. And they're just going to school, and they call it medical retirement. Some of them, they get 50%, 80%, and they're working with us. And they're like, I know I don't make a lot, but I got to put this to work. And so first is thinking. Change the thinking first to where I'm just going to keep getting this paycheck every 2 weeks. That government thinking to like, I gotta see the future now, and I got to do something now. And start putting not just a little bit towards savings, but you wanna think bigger, as Joe did, so that you can reach financial freedom 1, 2, 3, 4 years later. It could be done.
Yeah, I mean, so I can jump in and just share my experience of that, and really what Chris just said is the important piece, and that is the Tardus learning from Tardus, getting coached by Tardus, taught me how to invest my money smartly and different strategies that I could use to create passive income. But the biggest shift in all of that was the mindset around how I was investing, what's worth my time to do and what isn't worth my time to do, where I want to work and who I want to work for, and if I want to actually ever work for anyone again, which I don't. So I'm going to go with, I met Chris and Tanisha 2 or 3 years before I retired. And when I retired in 2018, I didn't have to work for anybody. Between my pension and other passive income sources coming in from different real estate endeavors and the income snowball and all of the interesting things that Tardus taught me, I was able to retire at age 46. And a year later, my wife retired as well. And so now we both
so
early 40s living the life.
Yeah, so that's interesting, and that's that's what we want to encourage people to do. We want them to be less self-centered to today and more thoughtful about what's going to be coming up. But that the vast majority of, especially enlisted military folks, and I hate to segregate them in categories, but that is the way that it is. It is a different mindset. Generally, the income level is smaller, especially at the lower ranks, and people are generally coming up in the world. So most people, I have a 29-year-old son, and I promise you, he's not thinking about 30 years from now. He's not thinking of being, almost 60 years old like his dad. He's thinking of,
he's thinking about next week.
That's right. He's thinking about next week, and there is
about Friday night. Yeah.
Well, but that's important too. right? So,
Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah.
so it's a balance, right? So even you said, like, the thing that probably got you on the straight and narrow was meeting Tanisha, who was probably a little bit more stable and could help kind of direct you a little bit. She's an attorney, so she already kind of knew how to navigate certain aspects of the world that an enlisted, probably staff sergeant, didn't have that skill set. But it works. And the reason it works is because it changed your focus, like Joe said. How do you change that mindset to be less about today and like give up some of that, what you think is your freedom, for ultimate freedom, which is where I'm at and Joe is at and where you guys are at. But we can all do better, right? It's not that you want more because you're greedy, but lifestyles change too. So how do you maintain that? So talk a little bit about that.
Well, can I say something? I was thinking with what you guys were saying, I was thinking, don't you think it's a little different now though, with like all the, how the economy has just really been shifted by this virus and everything else. I think that even the younger generation, maybe some of the millennials and things, like they're starting to look at their finances a little bit different. And seeing how devastating this has been for so many people, I think I feel like I'm seeing a shift in how people are thinking. So I don't think all hope is lost for the young ones. I think that this is kind of like one of those things, almost like 9/11, where it changed how people thought about the stock market, about how they thought about their future. People who weren't thinking about their future are thinking about it now because they're looking at all these people out there and they're thinking, gosh, okay, when I get out, right, I don't want to be in the position that these people are. I don't know. I'm thinking that there's an opportunity, if people see it, for them to make a change now, so that they're not in a bad position if anything like this happens in the future.
That's interesting that you should mention that about, not necessarily about what's happening today, because we're all in that. And again, so some people that are at retirement age, hopefully they're in a position where this doesn't impact them. If you have a pension, then you're generally going to be more stable because it's not going to, at least a government pension like I have, it's pretty stable. So today, I was just a little while ago, I had a young kid who was over at my house, one of my neighbor's sons, 18 years old. He was cutting my grass because I was willing to pay somebody to do it, right? So I was going to give him some passive income that he could use. Now, he's probably going to go use it to go party with his friends tonight, but it's interesting. I was just having a discussion with him and I asked him, well, you're 18, so what's your plan? Are you going to college? What do you got going on? And he said, well, I really don't think I want to go to college at this point, but I'd like to do something in the financial sector. And I thought, well, I'm not sure how you're going to do that without going to college, but that's a discussion for another day. And he said, but it's interesting. He said, I had like $3,000 in my savings account, which at 18 is substantial. I wish I had $3,000 when I was 18, but he, I thought it was interesting that he said, but my dad has a financial investor, and my dad, the financial investor, encouraged me to let him take my $3,000 and to invest it in a stock portfolio, like a short-term stock portfolio of accounts that are like, so, I have a little bit of money, to play with. So I bought some stocks of some of the underperforming, like blue chips that the government is going to bail out, right? Like certain airline stocks and certain automotive stocks.
Yeah.
But I can afford to kind of play with that because it's not money that I'm relying on. But for an 18-year-old to suggest that he's going to make a quick buck because these stocks are going to rebound, I thought that's a little bit insecure. Like what he should be doing is using that money to find a way to.
What do you guys think?
What do you think of that?
Yeah, just a couple things. First, with that, we teach in our systems, if it's more in your control, the better it is. The less control, meaning it's stuck in the market, or out of your control, the worse, because you have no recourse. If it's going down, it's going down, and you have to understand the system and study that system to make it work for you. And it's not the easiest one to wrap your head around, and it's always changing. And so that seems, yeah, a little, it's out of control. Long story short, the second one is somebody that has a little bit. Our company works on not, like he's 29 or 18, and he's not thinking 35 years from now, if I put away a little bit in my portfolio, I'll have X. Again, it's out of your control. What can you do with that $3,000 to start to do something to make more money? And that's what we're about. And when you're 18, by the time you're 29, you don't have to work again. That's how we think. We think outside the box. And everybody with a little, even though enlisted, we have people that are E2s, E3s that are with us, that now they're going to, by the time they get out, they're going to be really comfortable, or they can say, I can step out of 10 years. I don't need to be in, so it all starts with the thinking.
Yeah. And the other thing is that like, it takes, he's obviously really young. Did you say that he said his dad is like a financial advisor? Is that what he said?
No. So his father has a career. His father is pretty successful, but his father has a financial investor. So he has a financial advisor, similar to like you guys, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
But
yeah, no, we're not financial advisors. Yeah, everyone that we deal with, they handle their own money. We don't touch their money. All the money they make, they keep. We don't take any.
Right. You teach them the tools on how to turn that money into something they can live better than survival.
Yeah, it's basically creating monthly income for them right away, and doubling that money and tripling it, and having monthly income versus I'm going to take this 3,000, I'm going to throw it in there. I'm hoping that it makes money, and so maybe in 30 years I'll have $200,000 and I'll be able to live on the $100 a month interest. That's right. It's outrageous. So yeah, we're about teaching them how to create lots of monthly income, predictable recurring monthly income today that grows in the future. Yeah.
I obviously don't like the model where you take your money, you give it to some financial advisor, and then they go and invest it. Because in my opinion, the only people that actually make money on that are the institutions that are investing the money. It's not geared towards the individual. And that's why I like what you do, which is you provide me coaching, and then I go and I do what my coach says, or I don't do what my coach says. And then
if you're Joe, you might not. We don't know. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, so knowing Joe, I think that the thing that really gives him some security when he decides not to do what you tell him to do is that he's diversified. So he has a lot of things going on in a lot of different areas. So if one thing kind of isn't working so well, something else may help support that, or maybe it validates his decision to himself. But I think it's an interesting question about what that young kid said to me, and he was pretty impressed with himself about it. And I thought, well, I wouldn't recommend my son to do that. No matter what I'm doing with my play money, it's a whole different idea when this is what you have to live, especially if you're impacting your monthly income, like what you may not have a job tomorrow, like what's going on today with so many people. So financial freedom is really important for military folks. So this is a good reinforcer for that idea.
Going back to the other point that Chris and Tanisha were making, I wish that I started doing more of these strategies earlier in my career. If I was, so I retired as a commander. If I was doing this when I was a lieutenant, it would be a crazy. Whatever. I got enough money, but what do you guys think?
Yeah. So the earlier you start, the better. No matter like enlisted or not or officer. I'm just wondering what the percentage of people that get out when they retire that have to go back to work. I'm enlisted.
Yeah, I wonder. Do you guys know those stats? No.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know those statistics, but I know that a lot of guys. So my peers, folks that are, essentially senior officers, 05s plus that retire, they go. A lot of them go back to government service because it's what they know, right? So you just kind of trade your uniform for a different set of clothes, and you walk back in the office either as a government employee or as a contractor, and you're doing a similar thing to what you were doing when you were in the service, which for me, that's not for me, but that is a comfortable solution for some people. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that now that if someone were to come to you guys in that position, they'd have a pension and maybe some disability money coming in and income from another job. You can do a tremendous amount with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think so that's a good point though, Joe, is that a lot of times, and the general public, not even thinking about the military. So the general public generally gravitates towards the federal government because one, it's job security. You get through that first year or 6 months or whatever, you're in. It's almost impossible to get rid of you. Two, if you're smart or you're good at your job, then you can move up the income ladder. But it really becomes a static thing. So if you're going to do that, then what are you going to do to help you get over the hump? And in the military today, when I went in and when you went in, Chris, it was 50% retirement, right? It was when you were in too, right, Joe? Your contract was you got 50% of your high for your base pay or whatever it was after 20 years.
Yeah, they've changed that model now. So if you're a younger person in the military now, the retirement structure is different, and we probably at some point want to interview someone who's under that different structure so that we can talk to them about that.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point that, what's going on today, that job security, even working for a stable entity like the federal government, may not be so stable a year from now, because we're printing fake money now and just giving it out to people who are now going to be sitting outside going, man, I've been waiting for that postman to drop me my $1,200. Like, WTF? What's going on? How am I going to eat tonight? And we don't want people to do that. So this is actually a great suggestion that people, and we're going to be posting your, what you do, or links to you guys. But there's a lot of other, I think it's important to point out that you guys aren't the only game in town around the country. I mean, you do great things for the people in Hawaii. And I think I've read your stuff and you're doing stuff outside of on mainland as well.
Mm-hmm. Nationwide, yeah.
Nationwide.
Different countries, too.
Yeah, so the important thing I think would be, and I think you would agree, is that people need to start thinking, no matter who, first off, you have to trust the people and what they're doing. Don't just give your money to just some stranger because he works for Merrill Lynch. Because he's working for Merrill Lynch. It's not working for you, right?
Yeah.
And he's not learning, and they're not teaching you what they know, which is what you guys are doing. So that's the benefit here, right, Joe? Is that what you think?
That's what I think. So why don't Chris or Tanisha, whoever wants to do it, why don't you guys tell us like what that model is, and what somebody who's either in the military or retired from the military and now receiving some benefits from the military, like, just kind of specifically say what that model is for our listeners.
Okay, so basically what we teach my system called Income Snowball. We have a group of coaches who will work with you specifically. So as long as you've got some sort of income and cash flow, it'll work, right? It'll work for you. And what we'll do is sit down, look at what your income and expenses are, and then run it through my financial modeling software. It'll say, okay, you're going to make these investments, and you don't even have to have savings to do it, right? You just have to have a little bit of extra cash flow each month. And then we show you exactly what to do. Now, the investments you make are going to create income for you within 30 to 45 days. And that income you're using to build up for the next investment. So you continue to do that over and over again, and kind of slightly changing the strategy throughout the year. And you can pay off debt at the same time. So you can actually, if you have a mortgage or you have a car loan or student loans, you can do both at the same time, pay off debt and create income at the same time. So the big difference, I think, between what we're teaching and any other type of investment system or strategy, one of the big differences is that we don't handle your money, you handle all of it. You do everything that the software tells you to do, and the coach instructs you to do. There's some additional strategies your coach will use that are not shown in the software. But all of that will create income that you can then live on for the rest of your life. So Now you have extra income today. So for instance, we have all these clients right now in this whole coronavirus situation who they've got $5,000 or $6,000 a month and they are working. But if their income was cut, or they have two incomes, maybe one spouse is in the military and the other one has another job, and the spouse who has a regular job loses their income. A lot of couples need two income these days. They're in trouble, but not if they're a Tardus client, because now they've got this extra money that they can use if they need to, right? It might slow down their financial freedom date, might slow down their debt freedom date if they need to use that money, but they can do that. They can do that if they want to. And then there's people like Joe and Melissa that have, huge money. They're not affected at all by any of this.
Right. So exactly. So based on the modeling that you guys built for me, there's I think I have like 9 different income streams, including retirement and my disability. And this, I mean, I can stay here I don't want to, but I can stay in my house like until I die of old age, and I'm good.
Keep cranking. Yeah, I got you. I got what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said something. 9 different income streams.
Yeah.
You're not working dollar for, you're trading your time for dollars.
Yeah.
That's one way of doing it. How you transition that into the next, into the next, into the next. And now it turns into a snowball. It turns into a machine. So then you're like, I don't have to do that anymore. Like when she was free, she was going to work at the law firm, she was like, show up late, I don't tell you guys to show up late, but she was like, okay, they fired me, I'm good.
Yeah, I didn't care whether I was fired, basically, because I knew I didn't have to do that. I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't have another thing to do, and I have to do something.
Which is great. Like when you walk into your job on any given day, knowing that you can quit and leave, like that is a great way to enter the workplace every single day.
It really, I can't even tell you.
So it actually makes you not so much lazier, but you make you work harder because you're like, hey, I don't need to do that. Let me just do my best to help you.
Yeah, I wasn't lazy. And I don't think I was lazy either.
It's weird because you're cutting out, Chris, but Tanisha's fine. So I don't know if
maybe she is a speaker.
Good voice. we know who's the alpha dog in that house.
Yeah, Melissa.
I'm by the mic. Yeah.
That's talk loud.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's basically I think the reason why our system is so different and so unique, and the reason why it's helping people. Joe, I don't know if you know this, but we have all of these clients from way back in the day that are all coming back now. We're the phone's blowing up. Email, people are calling in. It's weird, but I know it's because of what's happening, and they're going, crap, I've got to get back to basics, relearn what they taught me a long time ago, and get back on track. Yeah, so it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because they're seeing their out of control money, and the market goes down, up, down, up, down.
Or their job income.
Yeah, and they're like, oh my gosh, I should have never left. Stupid me.
Well, I think that, so the thing that I really take away from it is, the thing I really liked about this discussion is how it got wrapped up with one thing that Joe said. And that was, by learning techniques and change in mindset about priorities, he's no longer reliant on one form of income. Now he has various streams that help if one fails or is no longer viable, he doesn't have to rely on that. And that's why people have problems. It's because they rely on one thing, and that thing, when they lose stability, like when we got out of the Air Force, Chris, it was a wake-up call. It's like, oh man, what do I do now? So that's kind of what I'm taking out of it. The thing that excites me is I don't just have to rely on this one benefactor. I have become my own benefactor because of these tools, these financial change of thinking.
You can tell that Steve-O is not a client, right?
Yeah.
But Steve-O's doing pretty good. So, Steve-O, so honestly, going through the Steve-O system through my whole life of going through all these trials and errors, I got lucky. and I fell into a good situation. That doesn't happen to most people. So, but even Steve-O can learn a lesson. And that's what I'm learning here, is that just change the way that you've taught yourself, allow yourself to listen, and then maybe put that listening into practice. And you just try it. Like you said, you could try it with just a little bit of dough. So if you just have a little bit of cash, little extra cash, then you could maybe turn that into something that becomes more viable for the long term. Is that right?
Here's the thing: you're doing it. No one else is doing it.
Yeah.
I tell people, we go away tomorrow. You now know how to do it. Your money in the market, you don't know how to do it. You have no idea. But that's all you've learned. Someone taught you that. But you think about anybody who's done anything great with their money, they don't think in that box. Anybody. And so you got to think differently now. Yeah.
Well, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time and try to keep this around 30 minutes, which we're hitting. So does anybody want to have any last words before we sign off?
No. Get moving today. I'm so glad you have us on. Just to first think differently. And get your butts moving out of that. Every 2 weeks, I get my income, my government income. You got to get out of that thinking, because it's going to go down when you get out a lot. Wake up call. Or you're getting out of the Air Force, or getting out of the military early, which a lot of people are doing. They don't stay in. You better do something now.
Yeah. So and Tanisha, do you want to add on to that?
No, not really. I mean, it's exactly what he said. People, use this big shakeup as an opportunity to change what you're doing. You're not going to be able to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's really a good way to kind of put the wrap, right? So I think that we're going to let our viewers know that we're going to be posting on our social sites, on our media sites, some links to Tardus, and so that you can get to know kind of what they're doing, if that's an option for you. But also what we really want you to do is to be thinking. And then one other thing that we really would like you to do is to keep watching this show. Go out and like and share, and because we want to share this information, we want to become a collective of a different mindset, right? And you guys are allowing us to do that by coming on the show. So
awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. We appreciate it. All right. This is Joe and Steve-O signing off with Chris and Tanisha Souza from Tardus, and we'll have their information posted on our social media, and you can go check them out at their website and all of the different social media platforms that they're on. All right. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Veterans Voices with Joe and Steve-O. We have some guests lined up in the future now. People are excited to be on the podcast. If you're one of those people that wants to be on our podcast and you have an interesting story, reach out to us, because we would love to hear from you. I got a friend of mine. The reason I'm hungover today is because a friend of mine was over my house last night sharing some bourbon to celebrate his final day in the United States Navy. And he has told us that he's going to let us record his story, and we'll do several episodes with him as he transitions from active duty military to a veteran and goes through the whole process. So we will be bringing that story to you in the near future.
Yeah, and we have some other cool guests too. So
we look forward to hearing from you soon. Again, follow us on our social media pages, send us comments, and we hope that you all have a great day and you're staying safe in the pandemic.
Have fun.
Don't you see? When you must